Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today is the founding member and keyboardist of one of just the great bands in rock. They recently celebrated their 40th anniversary. They've released a brand new single, and they'll be hitting the road this summer alongside REO Speedwagon and Styx. From Loverboy, please welcome Doug Johnson. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Jeff.
Oh, my pleasure. And let's start with the new single release. It's definitely a harder edged, modern sounding Loverboy. What's the history of the songs? It's something you guys put together recently? It's something you had kind of hanging out in the vaults?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things you just mentioned. We have a kind of a library of parts and pieces and lyrical snippets that are all sort of sitting in this ether of possibility. And Paul, our guitar player, just assembled this cool sort of arrangement. And he had this, release being the kind of the universal sentiment right now with everybody being locked down. And I thought, what an appropriate way to kind of announce that we're, going to be coming back out again, and all things being equal, with respect to the overall health of the population and herd immunity. And I know we'll ultimately get there. So he put together this track, and Mike and him worked on melodies and they came to me and they said, "What do you think for keyboards?" I said, "Well, I think we could probably do a pretty modern treatment of this." And I've got a few ideas. So I basically gave them, and this was all done via internet, because obviously the limitations of getting together and sitting in a confined space are limited these days. So we received tracks and we went back and forth, and I added my things, and they, at the end of the day, they had lots of things to choose from, and then they ultimately mixed in the parts that they thought were working, and lo and behold, we had this new song. So but I think the video is interesting too, how we've used a lot of archival footage from our the golden halcyon days of touring in the 80s, and that's always interesting to look at, and kind of takes people back to that time. I mean, I think we've evolved into being a nostalgia band for a lot of people. So we are happy to play our songs for people and look out in the audience, and just you can see them kind of being transported in a kind of musical time machine back to like for yourself, when you were young, and maybe things were in your life were different and good, and so that's a real gift that we are able to share with our fans.
And the band has released a couple sporadic singles over the last few years. We kind of live in a streaming world now where it's the immediate gratification. Any interest in doing a full record, or is it just kind of as a song comes together, you guys will put it out there?
The whole concept of since we came into the scene back in the 80s, where you had an album of songs that you worked on, and there was kind of an underlying thread throughout, and so the strategy for putting together a whole record was that, okay, we have these songs. There'll be some songs that probably won't get as much airplay, but these songs may or may not get lots of airplay, and that will draw interest to the rest of the songs, and so on. So I think that probably still holds today. But at this point in our career, I'm not ruling it out, but it's kind of unlikely that we would ever do a whole record. I could be wrong, but to me, being able to just release a few singles, as you say, sporadically through the years seems to be a better model for us. That way we are kind of satisfying our creative urges, and also if there are people out there that are still interested in hearing something that that we've worked on in the moment, then that's great. But I'm not really sure if we would ever do a whole record again, to be honest, Jeff.
Well, and I think it's tough too, because I mean, you guys go out, you play to full crowds, and like you said a little earlier, people are singing along and being transported back to a certain time. And it's almost like they want to hear the hits. You know, at this stage, you have to weigh whether or not a crowd wants to learn something new.
That's
Mhm.
always a factor. We have in the past, I think 10 years ago, we had a song that we were all very excited about called I'm Alive.
Mhm.
And we ended up recording that. We released the live version of that song. And as much as we enjoyed doing that song, we ultimately decided to pull it from the set because there was just a visceral change in the audience's sort of enjoyment level. It was like, and I've experienced that too. I've gone to see bands and what I consider to be vintage bands, and you know, they've got a pedigree, and they'll throw in a new song, and I'm like, why are you doing this? I paid good money to see the songs that I know. And so I kind of relate to that. And so we just, you know, sometimes you just out of boredom, you kind of you want to throw in something new, and just to keep it interesting. But ultimately, we're in the service of the fans, to give them a good show, and I think we do that on a pretty consistent level. And you know, there's pretty decent musicianship in the band, and we have a catalog of songs that our fans love, and they want to hear those songs. So a song has to have a special merit if it's new to place in our set, and whether or not this one will make the grade, I don't know, but we haven't played for 2 years. So, you know, we had a gig lined up in Washington that sadly we had to postpone because somebody in our camp, and I'm just to kind of get back on the horse again and see how it feels. And so we're really, really chomping at the bit, speaking of horses, to get back out there and play for people.
And during the pandemic, you guys celebrated your 40th anniversary. The first record was in 80. The follow-up, Get Lucky, was in 81. Were you guys planning on doing anything special on the road? You know, were you looking forward to this and then all of a sudden it kind of disappears? Or was it, well, yeah, 40 years is good, but let's just keep going?
Yeah, well, both actually. We were disappointed that we weren't going to be able to have some sort of a commemorative, you know, backstage pass or something on the ticket, you know, since 1980, you know, that kind of, or 1979 or whatever, you know, time mark you want to anchor it to. But we just move forward, and the whole 40th anniversary, yeah, that would have been kind of fun to say, but I think you know, 42 is not bad either, so we'll stick with that.
And kind of looking back through the band's career, I mean, those first two records, they're absolute classics. And it's like I said, some of the first rock records I remember buying as a kid. So as a young band going into the studio with a young producer, I mean, Bruce Fairbairn wasn't Bruce Fairbairn yet.
Right.
Did you feel that, you know, there's something about these songs and something about this group of people putting it together? You know, was there an energy when you went in where you kind of had a feeling something was about to happen?
You're always hopeful.
Mhm.
I'm quite a pragmatist, and so I kind of go at it with the approach of these songs are solid, and they've been tested. We had played those songs a lot in the nightclubs, and we had really kind of trimmed the fat and found out what worked. So we tested them, dutifully on a live audience. And so we had this basically like a 20-song category. When we first started playing in the nightclub scene, after our very first gig with Kiss, that was the first time we'd ever played live anywhere, opening up for Kiss in 1979. I think it was November the 23rd or the 30th or something. And so that was our first exposure in front of 14,000 people who didn't know who we were, didn't know our songs, because we played all original music, opening up for Kiss. I mean, how insane is that? But we did it anyways. And so the following months, we started playing the local nightclub scene here in Vancouver, and we tested a lot of songs that we've been working on. And so the songs that we figured made the grade, we took with us into the studio. And Bruce was a great guy, because Bruce was the kind of guy who was like a father, big brother, babysitter figure. He knew each of us very well, and he knew how to play to our strengths. And I think that is what made him a great producer. He was really diplomatic and a very good communicator, and able to tell people in kind of gentle terms what needed to be done and what or might be excluded, that kind of thing. So he was a great guy to work with. And but the overarching feeling was that, okay, we've got a record deal. This is so exciting, and let's just put these songs down. Certainly there's going to be some people that like it, and let's see what happens. And so that's kind of what we did. We went into the studio in a Little Mountain Sound, which became like the mecca for a lot of 80s iconic records. And Bruce Farrer and Bob Rock were a big part of that. We went in there for a better part of 2 weeks, and then we mixed it, sent it off, and then out it went. And The Kid Is Hot Tonight was the first single, and then Turn Me Loose was the next single, and then I think Lady of the 80s, and then it just really, that's what really started to get us exposure, so that we'd be able to open up for as an opening act for bigger bands. So but yeah, I always hoped, and I kind of had a plan that, if this didn't pan out, then I was going to go back to university and get a degree and carry on.
Yeah, I don't think people really give you guys enough credit for really starting what became the 80s sound with Bob and Bruce. Those first two records really set a template. But for me, the third record, Keep It Up, was always my favorite Loverboy record. And when you got there, you guys were already big at that point. Did you start to feel a pressure, to keep the team together and come up with something new?
There is pressure, because now you've become something that there's a great expectation, and you want to live up to what you've done previously and also maybe surpass it. So it's a good synergy, because I mean, ultimately it all comes down to the pressure you put on yourself, right? I mean, the outside pressure is all very much just a function of how you think about it, and do you have to get somebody's approval? Do you have to get back to make sure the fans are going to like it? Because originally it came from a place of, do I like it? Do I think this is good? So if you can stick to that core, do I think this is good? Yeah, that's great. Okay, so it passes. I think it's really good. I've been influenced over the last 4 years by my experiences on the road, by new music I've listened to. All that comes into this alchemy of creativity that you then move forward with. And hopefully the fans that have enjoyed your previous stuff are also going to resonate with your new material. And so to that end, yeah, you feel this kind of I wonder how it's going to go, like you put this new stuff out there and you go, you kind of hope that people are going to respond to it, because it's so much fun when they do. And so, but life is a crapshoot, right? You put music out there and you hope somebody can resonate with it, or in some ways empathize with what the music is about, and so that's, at the end of the day, that's all you can do, and that's what we tried to do. So going into the studio on the third record was nice, because how it worked with, like, the record companies are kind of like a bank, and they lend you money according to your assets that you have in their bank already, which is, two successful albums. So now going into the studio, they advance you a certain amount of money, which affords you then more studio time, and more time to work things out in the studio than otherwise would have been if you hadn't have had that. So that's a nice advantage to have too. So but the creative process always comes down to just, you sweat it out. You just sit there, you write songs. I can remember when I got my first Fostex multi-track cassette machine. It was a little 4-channel mixer. And so way before digital, just as MIDI was coming in, the musical instrument digital interface, which is now kind of standardized, that's even becoming obsolete now with Bluetooth and all that. So, but way back when, we all had these little cassettes, and we would put our ideas down, and then we would come to our band rehearsal and I'd go, I have an idea for the beginning of a song. So they would go, yeah, that's pretty cool. And so I have this idea. So the technology facilitated a little bit more sort of creativity as we went on. But at the end of the day, we kind of were left to a very much democratic process to see which songs kind of made the grade. And what I would get one in there once in a while, maybe 2 on a record. Paul and Mike, they collaborated a lot together. I was more of a lone wolf, kind of doing my own thing, and then I would sort of say, hey, I've got this idea, and then they would go, okay, that's pretty weird, but we can maybe, we can somehow fuse it together with our identity musically and make something of it. So that's kind of how we worked.
And by the time you got to Lovin' Every Minute of It, things began to change a bit. First record without Bruce, Tom Allom, who went on to work with Judas Priest, came in to produce it. And then along with the next record, Wild Side, you guys really started using some outside writers for the first time. And was that just something where the record company was like, okay, you got to keep up with the trends, so we're going to bring in the guys that are hot, the Mutt Langs, the John Bon Jovi and Richie Samboras, to work on your record? How did you guys take that when those outside writers started coming in?
Well, you got to be humble, right? You have to kind of be open to other possibilities. Obviously, when looking back now on that whole process, I can say that a lot of us were just tired of being on the road and of not really having a normal life. And as much fun as it was, when you're on the road for 180 days a year touring and then having the pressure of having to come back and put another record out and doing the whole thing in the following year, you tend to, at least I can only speak for myself. I know that I kind of went through this period of, I'm tired of all this. I just need a break. But our record deal was basically, we need to have another record out. And so I kind of poured myself into starting to learn about soundtrack writing and movie scores and that sort of thing. And I don't know, I just kind of went through this phase where I wasn't really that interested in doing another record. And so as I say, I can't speak for the other guys in the band, but I think there was also a kind of a visible drop in energy level in terms of creative output. And in order to bolster that, they brought in some people to say, hey, you guys have had a good run, or would you be open to hearing some material or collaborating with some other guys? And that's kind of how that all went down. And they were like, yeah, I think, we don't really, I think the grist for our mill might be, drying up a little bit. And so if we want to keep this thing going, then let's be open to that. So we brought in, John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora had a song, which became notorious. And then we had Bill Ray, we had a couple of other people that were very competent pop writers, arrangers that came in, and we worked with them, and so that helped the whole process for that record. So I wouldn't say I have a negative sort of view on that whole process. It's just what was required at the time, because everybody was pretty, I would say depleted, creatively and probably physically too. I know I was.
And you guys took a little break after that, and then got back together, and you've been going strong, playing live, couple records here and there, the singles that we had talked about ever since. And with the exception of the tragic loss of bassist Scott Smith, the Loverboy that's walking on stage this summer are the same guys that walked in that studio 42 years ago. And when you look at other bands of your time, I mean, sometimes you're lucky if you have one member of the classic lineup in the band.
Right. Yeah.
What is it that's kept you guys together all these years?
Possibly because we're completely unemployable in any other realm.
You have no other choice.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's we're suckers for punishment. I mean, we get on quite well. We're very different people. I mean, we're like brothers, and you have your path of life, and we've all been through, 4 weddings and a funeral together on our journey, and we know that the sum of the parts is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, I guess you could say. And so what we have to offer collectively is an experience for people to really enjoy. And I think the fact that we can still do this and enjoy the experience together says a lot. And I think that we've still got some good miles ahead of us too. So.
Yeah, and we mentioned the tour, which kicks off the end of May and goes through the summer here in the States, with REO Speedwagon and Styx. And I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that you guys probably should have called this like the snub tour, is you guys are 3 massively successful bands who have been completely snubbed by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, I mean, I didn't realize that. But okay, well,
is that something that ever crosses your mind when you walk out and see those full sheds that are there to see you guys, that, that recognition has eluded all 3 of those bands?
I have no animosity about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's choices. They have criteria that I guess they use, and all the power to them. I mean, that's just life. At the end of the day, it comes down to, do you like what you do? And we do, and we get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Whether or not we qualify to be members of this group, that's, to me, that's almost irrelevant. It's always nice to get the accolades. We've certainly been bequeathed many accolades along the way, and for that we're grateful. But you don't do it for that. You do it because there's some meaningfulness in the experience of your music and how it impacts your fans when you go out on stage, and to look out at as Bon Jovi says, the sea of faces, and to see people singing along with your music, that's the reward right there. That's all I need. I don't need to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't need to be held up among my peers. I'm happy where I am. And so I've been there. I have been to the Rock and Roll. We've been invited. Ironically, come on down. You're not in it, but come on down. And I don't, that's fine. That is absolutely fine. There's no hard feelings. I love going through there because you get to see all the minutiae of
It's an amazing
yeah,
place.
yeah. I'd really recommend it.
Mhm.
Yeah, to anybody who's in the Cleveland area
Mhm.
at any point. So, but no animosity, no hard feelings. It's all good, and we've got a lot to be thankful for. So,
And we've been spending some time here today with Doug Johnson of Loverboy. The new single is called Release. It's available for streaming everywhere. They're hitting the road this summer with REO Speedwagon and Styx. All the dates are up on your website. You're crisscrossing North America. Hopefully, I can catch you when you get out here to the Northeast. And Doug, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and best of luck on the road.
thank you so much, Jeff. Look forward to doing it again someday, and keep up the good work on those guitars, man.
Thank you, my friend.
I
We'll
have to
talk
open up a
soon.
store pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Thank
All
you.
right, Jeff. All the best, man. Take
You
care.
too. Bye.
Ciao.